Welcome to Hogvillenet YouTube Live. I'm in Bud Walton Arena. I guess today they've got the leaf blowers out while they're cleaning up inside here, so it's a little bit loud in the background. Hopefully it's not too distracting as we try to push through this final regular season postgame. Again, Hogvillenet YouTube Live. We've done this all year long. We're not going to stop despite the Razorbacks are definitely slumping right now. 3 consecutive losses. Quality team, sure, but Arkansas loses at home today to the visiting Kentucky Wildcats. 88-79, as really, when you look at Kentucky both teams coming off a loss in the midweek, but this Kentucky team looks so much different than the version that Arkansas defeated in Rupp. Well, that seems like forever ago. But Arkansas could do no wrong in Rupp Arena in an 88-73 win just a few weeks ago. That was early February, about a month ago. Arkansas, that capped a 5 consecutive game winning streak in league play for the Razorbacks. Since that time, Arkansas finished out losing 5 of 7. So that's, a 3-game losing streak. The back-to-back losses at Alabama and Tennessee on the road. You played 3 ranked teams consecutively, and Arkansas had opportunities for quad-win wins in each of them and came up short. The blowout loss at Tennessee was ugly. There were stretches of the Alabama game on the road that were ugly. Arkansas loses by 3. And this is a game that Arkansas just shot itself in the foot. We talk about it over and over. It's never one thing, and sometimes it's multiple things, but it's never 1 or 2 things. It's usually 4 or 5. Today, we can go down the list. Arkansas was horrible at the free throw line. Arkansas was horrible at the rim. When Arkansas was dunking, they were 7 of 7. But when it was layup time, Arkansas went 2 of 20. You're not going to win many college basketball games going 2 of 20 at the rim on layups, and that's 10%. So the combination of poor free throw shooting and then Arkansas not being able to finish at the rim on layups. And I thought the other thing that really stood out to me, Arkansas battles in this game against a really good offensive rebounding team. And Arkansas finds a way, had so many possessions where they got not only 1 or 2 more chances after the initial miss because of their own offensive rebounds. Arkansas was +7 on the offensive glass, 17-10. But guess what? What matters is how did that translate to scoring? +7 on the offensive glass, 17-10 for the Hogs. Kentucky +8 in second chance points, 17-9. So we talked about the free throws, the layups were glaring things. I don't know if you knew that other stat I just mentioned, but it's a pretty big deal because Arkansas's got to find ways to convert. This is a team that still struggles in half-court offense. Even when Arkansas gets near the rim and missed layups today, they also turned away opportunities to shoot at close range and got bottled up and kicked the ball out for a worse shot. So these were the things that stood out to me. Really, there's a lot to talk about in this particular game. At Arkansas now limping into the postseason, it's ugly. 19-12. It's the first time that Arkansas has finished with a losing record in the SEC. 8-10 since Muss's first year. That team that team ended up going 7-11 before winning its lone SEC tournament game over Vanderbilt on that Wednesday night, first night, because Arkansas finished in the bottom 4 before COVID shut the season down. So that team ended up getting to 8-11 against SEC opponents. But we know what happened these last 2 years in between. So Arkansas now more so mirrors that first Musselman team than it does the last 2. I think at this point, nobody can say with a straight face that this is a good basketball team going into postseason. It's got good players. It's got good pieces in ways. Not a good basketball team right now, and that's just being fair. They've played some good teams, but some of the stuff here, the self-inflicted wounds, you don't see growth in this team right now and dealing with some of that stuff. To me, there's been huge backslides on the front line where Arkansas was really getting some gritty performances on that front line, especially in rim protection, rebounding, and some other things, and being a back line when things break down on perimeter defensively. That stuff it just seems like it was maybe a dream. We know it happened, but lately the front line pieces for Arkansas have just failed the team. And then, there's plenty of blame to go around. The backcourt, even though today technically we know this is a team with especially backcourt players that have struggled mightily with turnovers. They were good in the turnover game at Bama, horrible at Tennessee. Today they were great. +9, 15-6 in the turnover game. Arkansas cast that in with a nice advantage in points off turnovers, where Arkansas was 15-7, so +8 there. But again, when you're not making free throws, and when you're missing so many layups as Arkansas did, and then defensively, this is a team that has just gotten worse. What they've done in the past when they've been playing solid defense is overcoming some of these other problem areas on offense and other parts of the game. Just not the case anymore because their defense has given up, 50+% shooting to a lot of these teams. After, really shutting down Alabama in the first half of that game, and Arkansas built a double-digit lead 3 games ago, Bama caught fire in the second half, didn't look back. Tennessee was 50% throughout its game and dominated both halves. And then today, Arkansas could never really pump the brakes on Kentucky's offense. We're going to go through all of it. But the Wildcats shoot, they end up shooting 53.7% for the game. They were above 50% in both halves. It got better in the second half. Wildcat team that was a perfect 13 of 13 at the foul line in the first half, a perfect 9 of 9 at the foul line in the first half, whereas Arkansas was 6 of 9. So things just got worse for Arkansas. The Hogs end up shooting 22 of 34 from the foul line, 64%. They were just, it just was not a good look for this Razorback team. So many times this regular season at the line, and today was a microcosm of that. People are probably wondering, how did Arkansas win at Kentucky 88-73? We now know that performance was an outlier. Arkansas shot over 62% in that game from the field. The Hogs were 70+% in the second half. They made 20 of 24 free throws, well over 80% in that game. So it was an outlier. I mean, Arkansas, you got to give credit. That's a quad 1 win. It helps Arkansas's resume. I think it's Arkansas's best win of the season. But what Arkansas has done lately is showing a team that is regressing. I talked about the front line. There were some positives I talked about in the turnover game today. The fact that Arkansas battled for +7 on the offensive glass, but somehow Kentucky's +8 in the second chance points, which is what you do with offensive rebounds, is convert second chance. And so too many times today I saw Arkansas really stagnant on offense, not looking. Both teams finished with 14 assists, by the way. Arkansas's assist to turnover ratio was better than 2-1, so you'll take that, especially relative to what they've done most of the season. The problem is Arkansas had too many, when you're trying to cash in those second chance points and you can't convert a layup, or you can't even get a shot up where you look like you have a layup to take and you don't take it. These are things that, it to me, shows a team that has regressed. Confidence is playing into this, a lack of it. Guys that are guards that are the team's higher percentage free throw shooters, just not getting it done at the free throw line. And again, this is a game where Arkansas takes 22 threes. That's not a winning formula for the Razorbacks. They took 8 in the first half, 14 in the second. Some of those they put up at the end of the game trying to get cut into a 10-point or so deficit. But, time and again, that's been a problem, is taking too many. But today, when you got to the basket, nobody was making them. I was very disappointed, but I trust in us. That's Jamie Brown. Jamie, thanks for the comment. This is not, you go back to that first season, I talked about that team. They got to 20-12, 8-11 against SEC teams. But that team dealt with injuries too. If you recall, Muss's first season, Isaiah Joe missed a long stretch of games, and that's where things started to snowball. This was a little bit different this year. Arkansas had 2 key players out for long stretches, and even though Nick Smith Jr. has come back and done some really good things, there are still problem areas as this team is still one-dimensional. You see guys not willing to take open shots because they know it's not their strength. Now teams are sitting down and waiting on those drives, and it just makes things tougher. And Arkansas didn't get hosed by the officials today. There might be some questionable calls out there, but I thought Arkansas got bailed out a lot and got sent to the free throw line. It's just Arkansas didn't convert. Kentucky did. This is a team, the Wildcats, that shot 78.8% from the foul line, 26 of 33. They were perfect in the first half. And the lead was good enough in the second half when Kentucky did miss free throws. It wasn't nearly as troublesome as it was for Arkansas, who was trying to get back in the game and had way too many 1 of 2 free throw trips. I mean, just way too many. Stacked up so many of those. And, that's a formula when you're not making layups and you can't make free throws and you're getting to the free throw line a lot. This ended up being Kentucky taking 33 at the line Arkansas took 34. We know Arkansas was fouling at the end to stop the clock. So this was a game actually, when you look at how it started, it was Oscar Sheboy getting off early, 10 points and 5 rebounds early. Toppin he had 7 early points, and Kentucky jumped out 28. They were up 8, 28-20. And then the guy, Antonio Reeves, was just unstoppable today. No player has ever scored that many points, 37, against an Eric Musselman coach team on the college level. So we know he's 4 years at Nevada and then now in his 4th year at Arkansas. 37 points, 12 of 17 field goals, 2 of 4 from 3, and then he was perfect at the line, 11 of 11. Really didn't do a whole lot else except not turn the ball over. He only had 1 turnover. Kentucky ended up with 15. But he played 40 minutes, so it was all offense on it for him. He had a rebound, a couple assists, and a turnover in 40 minutes. So he took care of the ball and just cooked Arkansas all day. Arkansas, he scored at all 3 levels, and Arkansas, you can't leave a guy like that all open. As the game wore on, as Arkansas really tried to play a better game around the basket defensively. They left, Reeves was a guy that got loose, and so credit to him. I thought Toppin was spectacular as well. He hit so many big shots, both of them did, in this game when Arkansas would try to make a dent, try to chip away at a 10 or an 8-point lead and get it down to 4 or 5, and every time they did, Toppin would hit a 3. One he hit at a late clock, and he was hitting them off the bounce. He had a couple of them. Late in the game, he had a little 12-footer where Arkansas's big didn't close out on him. That guy can shoot a little bit. He's not a great shooter, but he can knock down those mid-range shots. So but you pick your poison. You close out on him. He's quick. He can handle well enough for a forward and get around you and get to the rim. And we saw some of that from Toppin today. So kudos to those 2 guys, because Sheboy, after getting off to such a great start, to me, this is a guy that could foul out in the first half of every game. The way he plays, that sounds like sour grapes, but he plays with high elbows. He extends a lot, and he makes a lot of contact that he initiates around opposition, defenders, shoulders and above. So that's usually a no-no in a non-basketball play. He does a lot of that before they start blowing the whistles. But he ended up being limited before fouling out to 26 minutes. After that great start to the game, he was a guy that, even though he finishes with a double-double, 12 points and 13 rebounds. He did most of his damage in the first half, especially early in the game. And then it was Reeves and Toppin, and they had some other guys step up. They had, I think, 2 or 3 other reserves that collectively had good production when you looked at, scoring a little bit and hitting the glass and doing some other things. For Arkansas, I look at this game and I think, I look at Nick Smith Jr., 25 points, 6 assists. He ends up with 3 rebounds, game-high 4 steals. He had a block shot, but he also had 3 turnovers. He had half of Arkansas' 6 turnovers. You're going to live with that when you look at all the other things that Nick did. He plays with a lot of energy. I think in transition, Arkansas ends up winning fast break. It started poorly for Arkansas. Kentucky was getting out in transition very early, but Arkansas ends up winning that battle. In fast break points, Arkansas was 13-6, so +7. And I think the ball moves better when Nick's pushing it and is part of the effort in transition. You see a different pace and a different energy. And I thought some of his, when he converted turnovers, did some things to help Arkansas there. I thought Jordan Walsh played his tail off today. Here's a guy that I thought really brought it. 31 minutes, 10 points. He was 1 of 6 from 3. He was 1 of 3 at the free throw line, but he had 7 rebounds and gave Arkansas a couple assists, a couple of steals, a block. But 31 minutes for Jordan Walsh, I thought he played really hard. I like Kamani Johnson. It was senior day for him. He wrapped up his college career as far as regular season today and last game at Bud Walton Arena. I thought he really infused some energy and some toughness for Arkansas, defending and battling and doing different things. I thought he frustrated Sheboy a little bit, but he had 8 minutes and did some good things for Arkansas. Very helpful there. This was not Anthony Black's game. I'm told by multiple folks that he's been, a little under the weather of late. So it sounds like an excuse, but he was doubled over a lot in this game. It looked like he was trying to gather himself or catch his breath. They may have talked about it on the telecast. I didn't have the benefit of that, so I don't know if that came up or not. But AB wasn't himself. 3 of 10, 7 of 12 at the free throw line. Ricky Council also had a poor shooting game from the field, 3 of 11. He did knock down 10 of 12 at the line. You know, 4 rebounds for him. Anthony Black, I mentioned his scoring, but he had 8 rebounds and 4 assists. And I think he had a block and a steal. So, you know, and it was not a high turnover game for Arkansas, which is what we've come accustomed to. So, you know, I'm kind of meandering here trying to find some positive to talk about when there aren't many. 19-12 is how Arkansas ends the regular season, and their overall record 8-10 in SEC play. We're going to talk about the SEC tournament that starts next week. Arkansas, it depends on what Florida does tonight. If Florida wins, and Mississippi State, even if Mississippi State loses on the road at Vanderbilt, the Bulldogs have the head-to-head tiebreaker with Arkansas for seeding because Mississippi State beat Arkansas in Bud Walton in the only game they played this year. Florida's at home against LSU. If the Gators win, they'll be a game ahead of Arkansas, even though Arkansas won that. So some of these teams came in tied today in the league standing, so Arkansas can do no better. If Florida loses, Arkansas will be the 9 seed. If the Gators win, that'll slide Arkansas down to the 10 seed, because it doesn't matter if Mississippi State wins or loses. If the Bulldogs win, they have a better record than Arkansas anyway in conference play. If they lose, they both finished 8-10, but Mississippi State has the head-to-head. So Arkansas is locked in either 9 or 10. If they're a 10, they'll play the 7 seed in the SEC tournament in a Thursday game next week. Arkansas avoids the bottom 4 of the SEC tournament seeding, which would be a Wednesday game, first round games, and then so Arkansas is going to have that one day bye into the second round, and again we'll play as a 10 seed against a 7 or as a 9 against the 8. And so we know who the teams that are clumped in, battling for those spots right now. I just went through some of that. At any rate, Arkansas, this is not the way you want to go into postseason. You know, it was so long ago. I mean, it was back in non-conference play, but, you know, Arkansas went 3-1 in neutral site games. Not true road games, not at home. You know, you hate to see Arkansas slip up like it did here late in the year, losing 5 of 7. 2 of those were at home. They lost 2 of their last 4 games at Bud Walton Arena. Prior to that, they were 11-1 at home, with the lone loss being Alabama early in league play in January. So, again, there's so many things we can look at and point at. NCAA tournament's going to be interesting. Arkansas slid prior, on Friday in Lenardi. I'm just going to use ESPN Joe Lenardi, bracketologist. Arkansas had moved from the 8 line to the 9 line. So that means no matter where Arkansas is among the 4 nines, they can be no better than top of number 1 of the 4. That means there's 3 spots below them there. And then on the 10 line, there's only 2 more that are, effectively not on the bubble. Once you get into the 3rd and 4th 10 seeds, and anything after that, you're on the bubble. And so things can get a little bit dicey. I talked about Arkansas seeing the SEC tournament. Chances are there's not a chance for a bad loss there. No worse than a quad 2 loss, most likely. The problem is not just Arkansas's net is so good, the metrics are so good when you look across the board, but if you have a quad 2 loss, depending upon some of the other things that can happen. Now, A&M beating Alabama today was huge because A&M can afford to stumble in the SEC tournament, and that team should stay above the top 30. That's one of Arkansas's quad 1 wins, one of their only of their 3. They're 3-9 in quad 1 games after today, but one of those quad 1 wins was a home win over A&M. It counts as quad 1 because A&M won, kept winning and finished the season really strong, but they moved up in the net top 30. They need to stay there. I think by beating Alabama today, that's secure. That helps Arkansas. So you look around at other teams that you played on your schedule. How do they finish? If some of these teams start to drop off and some of your higher quad wins drop a rung, that could be problematic, along with other bubble teams outperforming you at the end. And we know there's going to be a few teams that are outperforming a team that just went 0-3 in its last 3 games and needs to, hopes to bounce back in the first round of the SEC tournament with a win. So you kind of keep your eyes on that. Arkansas might just very well be a loss from getting, being square, not only on the bubble, but, maybe, somewhere you're looking at last 4 in. It's possible. I'm not saying I think that's what's going to happen, but I don't completely rule it out. I do think that I do think it's very much more likely, if you don't want to use the word lock, I don't like using that word. I said the other day I didn't see a combination of things that can happen to keep Arkansas out. That's because I really think a lot of stuff would have to happen in terms of some of those things I said. Some of your better quad wins becoming not as good, but so much of the net's baked in right now, and like I said, A&M's not going to be close enough now to that 30 spot to go for that to flip to a quad 2 and some other bad things to happen on Arkansas's resume. So I just don't think that's likely to happen, but I'm going to leave open the door cracked because you just never know. If Arkansas gets bounced by Florida or I don't think it would be Florida, it would Mississippi State or another team, that's probably not going to be enough of a hit to the Arkansas's net, because those teams are high enough in net that it shouldn't be just in a vacuum, it wouldn't be enough anyway to bounce Arkansas. But I don't think it would make Arkansas tumble enough, or even other things that are going on with other teams would matter too much. It may put them on the bubble technically, and they may end up with a 10 or, God forbid, an 11 seed, but you'll take that if you can qualify for the third consecutive NCAA tournament, by the way, for the program. Arkansas is looking, if Arkansas can pick up another win, they'll have a 20-win season for the fourth year in a row, all 4 years under Musselman. There's a lot of people, I'm seeing a lot of social media talking about this was, when you looked at the combination of the freshmen and the transfer portal in this class, did the Devo technical ever get an explanation? You know what? I rambled through all this for 21 minutes and didn't even talk about that's the turning point in the game. Devo had just hit a 3. Arkansas was down 3. We're talking first 2 minutes of the second half. It was just over 18, 15 left to go. He hits a 3. Arkansas's down 3. On the other end, it looked like maybe Sheway was going to get called for an offensive foul. I think Devo thought that. The whistle blew. He picks up the foul. He reacted, and that reaction was more. And I don't know if he said something. Musselman didn't talk about it. He was asked about it in the post-game press conference. He did not speak on it. But whatever Devo said, and as he was making that gesture, drew more than just a technical foul. It was called a Class A technical, so it's effectively 2 technicals. I don't know if they actually called 2 technicals or just by calling all of his antics around it a Class A, which it's the same effect as 2. But that's why you saw Reeves shoot 4 free throws. He then scores on the ensuing possession. It was a 6-0 run, so they go from up 3 to 9, and then Reeves scores again after that. He had Kentucky's first 11 points in the second half. He had 37 points, and he was getting them when he wanted. But that's what extended this game beyond a close game to a double-digit game. And Arkansas would have little runs, maybe a 4-0 run, or get a stop and string together some stuff. But they couldn't make free throws when they had opportunities to add on to it. And then Kentucky would fight back. They'd answer with their own little mini run, and it was usually Reeves or Toppin, kind of stopping those little spurts by Arkansas to keep Kentucky in a 3 or 4 possession lead or build it back up. And so the Devo play, the situation with Devo, he got ejected. That was the turning point if you want to look at one. We went through all the stats, all the problems Arkansas had. Don't know what kind of game this would have been if he stays in. To that point, he had played 20 minutes. He had 8 points. He was 3 of 5 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3. So he was actually a guy on a day when Arkansas shoots not very, Arkansas ends up, when we look at the stats here, 35.7% from the field, 7 of 22 from 3, so just around 32%. But Devo was a guy that at that point was actually shooting the ball a little bit well, not in volume, but knocking down what was given to him. And then, we know his defense through stretches of games can really help turn things and turn the tide. And so that was a huge loss. I'm not going to point to that and say that's why Arkansas lost today. I don't know that anybody was going to stop Reeves in this game. He looked unstoppable to me and played that way. And then Toppin did too. Toppin was just opportunistic. He only took 9 shots, 6 of 9 from the field, 7 of 8 at the line, hit a couple of threes. If we lose out, do we still make it to the dance? Well, you can only lose one more game before the selection Sunday. If you lose your next game, that means you've lost in your first game of the SEC tournament and you're out. There's no double elimination. It's not baseball. And so, then you're waiting. And so I think Arkansas's net is so solid. The 3 and 9 in quad 1 games is not great, but when you pair it with 4 and 2 in quad 1, it's respectable. It's not good. I used the word solid in a story, and someone called me out on social media. That was my adjective. Maybe it's not solid after today, but it's still respectable. And you only had 1 bad loss. That was on the road to open SEC play at LSU. That was a quad 3. So you have, and you didn't play a lot of quad 4 games. So you're the strength of your net, strength of your record, strength of your schedule, all that stuff makes Arkansas look like a tournament team on paper, and so much of it is determined by that. But it helps also explain why Arkansas is probably on the bubble when we were talking about seeding versus where those net rankings might make you think Arkansas would be. But your eye test tells you everything. Arkansas, in most of the big games this year, the Razorbacks either found ways to lose. A lot of it self-inflicted, didn't close games well, and that was the bread and butter of this program the previous. In fact, after mid-January, Arkansas got really sound defensively in those 2 seasons, and everything else kind of filled in around that. This team is backsliding on defense. I just went through the percentages. The last really good half this team had on defense was the first half at Bama, and now you're seeing guys look like statues out there. You're seeing Arkansas's front line giving the Hogs almost nothing scoring-wise. You weren't expecting a lot from them, but you expect guys to convert layups and roll off that two-man game and do a little bit of damage around the basket, just a little bit. So a little bit goes a long way in a game where you're managing and trying to stay in it, and it just hasn't happened for Arkansas the past 3 games. I haven't called anybody out by name, but there's not a whole lot of names on that front line. We know what's going on there for the most part. It's been a devolving. It really has. It's devolved, and so I'm curious about that. There are some things that look better to me at times offensively, and I think Nick has a lot to do with that. He hasn't shot well the last 2 games. I guess you could say really the last 3 games since Georgia, but he's had moments and he's had stretches. But his energy and activity, he causes some chaos on the defensive end, and he gets some deflections and steals. Today he had 4. He was on time with those lob passes for dunks, and he had 3 turnovers, and I thought some of his passes weren't all that great, all that crisp on those turnovers, but overall you're going to take that for a guy that's got 25 points, 6 assists, 4 steals. I mean, he's doing a lot out there on both ends to help you. And I thought Jordan Walsh, again, I thought this was one of his, I'm not going to call it a great game, but his effort on this stage, one of the biggest things I still see with his development is the defenders are just sagging off of him on the perimeter. And today, guys were kicking out to him, and he took some of those threes, but he didn't want to, and a lot of times he passed them up. And so he's looking to then dribble, and the clock's running down, and he doesn't really have a drive creation game. And then sometimes he'll struggle a little bit when he does get in the paint and the rim. These are all growth areas for him and development areas. And so even though he played like a warrior today, it's not anything I'm hanging just on him, but I just see the same problems for Arkansas being one-dimensional. People can decide, well, this was a great recruiting class. Look at the results. Man, Trevor Brazile and Nick missing 13 games in 2 months, and Trevor Brazile not playing a minute in conference play, made all the difference for what Arkansas became, because those guys both are multiple level threats on offense and just bring a different level of stuff that keeps Arkansas from being so 1 or 2 dimensional for long stretches. So you got one of those guys back. But the frontline piece of that really would have come in handy in these last 3 games. I thought the Mitchell twins and other guys, I mentioned Kamani, I thought I liked his 8 minutes. Graham, all these guys have done good things at times, but collectively these last 3 games, it has been a blind spot. I'm just going to say it, that the front line has been a blind spot for Arkansas these last 3 games. I'm not saying that's solely on them why these losses have happened, but it's been a huge part of it. And so, you took a step back there after gaining a backcourt piece that really helped with things in the backcourt in the flow there. Then your front line have taken multiple steps back. And these teams, we can go through it. We know what Sheboy is. He didn't have a great game today. He started great, but Toppin did. You saw what Tennessee was able to do. That's a Tennessee team that lost today on the road to Auburn. It's not a great team. It's a good team. But it looked like men against boys against the Hogs in the last game on the road in Knoxville. And then Alabama, Arkansas gift wrapped so much of what happened in that game in the second half after having a lead and still found a way to fight back in it. But, it's a loss. It's a loss. And so this Razorback team continues to flounder. I mean, there's no other way to say it. You lost 5 of your last 7 games. 2 years in a row prior to this season, Arkansas started slow in SEC play, turned it around, and got on big winning streaks. This team started 1-5. It was actually worse than the previous 2 years, in that regard. But they won 5 in a row, and you thought, here we go again. They're starting to figure things out. But the backslide in these last 7 games, you won 2 of them, both at home against, Georgia and Florida. But all the teams you played that are better than those teams, that are ahead of those teams in the pecking order, they beat you. They beat you in Bud Walton Arena. They beat you on the road. Arkansas had leads in some of these games, sometimes double-digit leads, and found ways to choke it up and not finish. They got blown out. I wouldn't call today a blowout. I would call today a team that fell apart at the free throw line and at the rim, and give Kentucky some credit. Well, this is what's so bizarre. You go back to Rupp, and Arkansas was Kentucky's defense looked like Swiss cheese. And had a big hand in what Arkansas did to shoot 72% in the second half and 60+% for the game, and 20 of 24 at the free throw line. It was just a different mindset. And today, Arkansas, whatever was working then offensively, just was in the crapper today. And if Arkansas just makes half of those layups, get a chance to win this game, and make a few more free throws and make half those layups, and they probably do win this game. That's how. This was a team that's shorthanded in the backcourt. This was a Kentucky at full strength. Cason Wallace, the star freshman guard that hit Arkansas up for 20 in Rupp, wasn't on the floor today. He's injured in the last game, came out of that game, a home loss to Vanderbilt. He didn't suit up today. Wheeler's been out. He missed the Arkansas game the first time around, but he just started missing games at that time. So Kentucky has gotten on the right path. This is a team that won 5 of 7 after losing to Arkansas at home, and Arkansas has lost 5 of 7. So this is where the part of the season where Arkansas teams in the last 2 years, they're that team that's finishing like that or better. This just isn't this team. That's not what this team has done, and I think it's too late. Honestly, I think it's too late to expect this team to show a ton of growth. I'm not saying they can't win games and get on a roll, but I think it might be, I think a roll at this time of year when other teams are playing better basketball, you're going to run up against that, and you better be on your A game. You better be knocking down free throws. You better be making layups. You can't afford to be as poor on defense. This was a team that was pretty good defensively when all else was failing to get back in the SEC play, and then of late, it's just fallen apart. Can't have it. You cannot be a good postseason team and be so dramatically bad in so many areas. And at this point, 31 games in, does anybody fully expect Arkansas is going to be able to, fully turn the page on that? That's going to be really hard to do. Now, we've seen teams get hot this time of year. Nolan Richardson's only SEC tournament team wasn't going to the NCAA tournament, but it won the SEC tournament, got on a run there, and then immediately the team that had struggled all year lost in the first round to Miami in that NCAA tournament. But they did win the SEC tournament and get an automatic bid. I'm not saying that this team needs to do that to get in. And what I'm saying is, even if this team has a run in the SEC tournament, that might just be a Band-Aid because it hasn't been able to sustain consistent basketball. I guess that 5-game winning streak. We go back to non-conference. That was like that was like a dream that ended. Trevor Brazile played through most of that, and when he was out, Nick came back. They kind of, and that lasted a little bit, but Arkansas looked like a team with one of those guys at least coming out of non-conference that could ride some momentum and not have such a shaky start maybe in SEC play for the first time under Musselman, but that didn't happen. And then, both players were out for the first part of league play by then. And that's probably the biggest reason. So this was a team that even though it started to turn the page a little bit in those 5 wins and you thought, well, here they go, it just wasn't sustainable. It was still too one-dimensional in so many areas. Poor taking care of the basketball. Just a poor, it's a poor ball handling team. It's not good. And, not a good free throw shooting team. Those are things that will wreck you when you're not a good three-point shooting team and you have long stagnant stretches on offense. You've got to at least win blue collar. You can't turn it over, and you got to make your free throws and get to the line in bulk and find ways. And that's what previous Arkansas teams did that weren't offensive juggernauts. It started on defense. So you go into postseason with all these question marks, and you've been backsliding. It's not to say that Arkansas, can't. We've seen in various sports, Arkansas teams kind of close out a regular season a bit with a whimper and then turn it on a little bit in postseason. I think the biggest problem here with that is not just the fact that Arkansas's defense. That to me, that's the biggest thing. But there are so many rough patches in other areas. You're not going to get all that fixed, and so the only chance this team has is to get it figured out on defense again. It's got to start there, and then you just hope you win. You just win because you're going to have to win now. It's do or die. You got one more, basically a gimme in the SEC tournament in terms of your season doesn't end there. I think it would be a weird combination of things that have to happen if Arkansas lost its first SEC tournament game, that it won't make it to the NCAA tournament. But the seed's not going to be great, and that might end pretty quick. Again, this team doesn't play sound basketball for consistent stretches through games. The Kentucky win was the best win of the season at Rupp 8 games ago, and that's turned out to be an outlier. It's not something you can bank on this Arkansas team doing. It's an outlier. And you'd hope that even if Arkansas didn't shoot so well, which it likely wouldn't, some of the other things that it learned in a game like that on the road, and it had been so bad on the road up until that point, that it would help them pick up some more wins, quality wins, and it just didn't. I mean, Arkansas's won twice since beating Kentucky and Rupp, and that was Georgia, a bottom dweller in this league, and a Florida team that had lost its best player the game before, and obviously wasn't going to be the same team. That was a do-it-all guy. Their big man is really their version of what Arkansas had in Jalen Williams last year, and we know how critical he was to that team's success. I thought he was the most valuable player on last year's team. He was a fixture at both ends. Arkansas doesn't have a guy like that, period. Trevor Brazile was a different type of player than Jalen, but a guy that brought so much to the table that I think, and then with Nick, I really think if they had been healthy all year, we're talking about a team that has a record similar to Alabama. We're talking about a 4 or 5 loss team right now. I know that's hard to imagine, but that's what I think. But that didn't happen. I mean, there's no point in going on about that, but that's what it looked like. So, there was a lot of things today. I'm glad someone brought up the Devo thing. I somehow managed to talk for 20-plus minutes without going into that, and that was the turning point of the game. But, all the stats, all these things, sometimes they lie. Today they didn't. The only thing that I thought, the only positive I can see, and I asked Musman about it in the post-game press conferences, against Alabama and today against Kentucky, not against Tennessee, because that was a turnover problem game, but 2 of the last 3 games, Arkansas has been much better than some quality teams in the turnover department. And so maybe that's something they can trend. Again, the Tennessee game in the middle was not an example of that. So maybe they're just on a roller coaster there too. But they need to be able to build on something. It's got to start again on defense. And then I think, taking care of the basketball, if they can have more games like this, it gives them a chance. They've got to knock down, this team's got to be somewhere between 70 and 73% shooting at the free throw line. But so many games they're below. They're sub 70 and sometimes sub 60 or a mid 60. It's just, that's not good enough. Not this time of year. Not this time of year. Because these games now, you get into postseason, once you get out of the SEC tournament, and that's going to be tough enough, but if you make it to the NCAA tournament, these are all good teams now. And I can, promise you that most of them are going to be more efficient than Arkansas, because Arkansas is not a good free throw shooting team. And sometimes that's what it boils down to. In a lot of Arkansas's games, we could throw out all the other crap that happened in the game. One thing I didn't talk about too, Kentucky was plus 10 in points in the paint today. That's the 3rd consecutive game that Arkansas has lost the points in the paint battle by double digits. It was much worse. Bama was minus 14. Tennessee was minus 24. Today, minus 10. This was an Arkansas team, despite all of its other issues, was pretty good and at least hanging in there and being close, within striking distance, 2 or 4 point differentials, sometimes winning that battle. Just getting dominated there. And I think it goes back to those defensive lapses I've talked about on the front line, where guys were walling up and protecting the rim even when there was a breakdown, and some of the quicker guards that just beat Arkansas to death. At least there was some level of rim protection and challenging shots. That's been missing. This team does not look good. No growth. Do you think Muss will pay more attention to free throw shooting percentage in future recruiting classes? What's funny about that? And when he's hit the portal and brought in guys that haven't been great free throw shooters, they've been pretty good. For the most part, they've had turnarounds when they got to Arkansas, and I thought that was one of those things that we undervalued about when we talked about the Musselman effect. I made assumptions the last 2 years that some of these guys he brought in that when you looked at their career prior weren't so hot, but they were better at Arkansas. And that's, I mean, most of the guys he brought in this year were struggle city at the free throw line, and they've remained that way. You know, the thing that's tough for Arkansas too, I mean, obviously Arkansas's guards are the highest percentage guys on the team. And they'll have games where they're knocking them down, and then they'll have stretches of games or throughout the game where they're really struggling, and especially lately. And you're just not going to win in against this quality competition when you're not killing it and everything else. You just can't do it. So we'll see what he does in the portal. I think Musselman's going to really attack that portal hard. Arkansas had a couple of recruits in today. 5-star Bayfall, who's already signed with the Razorbacks. He'll play in the McDonald's All-American game later this month. But he was in today for the game, as was David Castillo, a 6'1" guard. This is like the third or fourth time he's been on campus over the last 2 years. He's got an Arkansas offer, 5-star, played on Team USA on the summer of the U17 national team that won gold. But he's a top 25. Some services have had him up in the top 10. But David Castillo is a 5-star to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, a 6'1" point guard. So both of those guys were in today. We put some pictures out and tweeted those out. I've got a little video after I came back into Bud Walton out of the media room and press conference on my way back up here to do this. I got a little video of them out on the court chatting it up with Anthony Black that I'm going to tweet out in a little bit. But these guys were hanging around, and these are obviously Bayfall's already in the fold, but it always helps when you have these Saturday home games in season because you can bring recruits in, and this was a high-profile opportunity for Arkansas to do that. Yes, Fall is signed, but again, just the fact that he's here, along with another guy that's from a different, from the 2024 class, you're all hands on deck in recruiting, including players in your fold, whether they're Razorbacks that are playing this year or a future Razorbacks. I thought that was good for Arkansas to get David Castillo back on campus. He's a point guard that can score. He can shoot. There's some things he can do. But I think he's a fantastic player, and I think Bayfall is a guy that's going to really make Arkansas fans will see glimpses. But I think Musselman's going to lean heavily on the portal. This was a 6 freshman class, 5 out of the portal. Trevor Brazil was the 5-star out of the portal. We know what happened there. Arkansas's 5 stars from the high school class are outstanding players. It just hasn't come together for this team. I think when Brazil came out of the mix, there are just too many limitations in the other frontline options. They have to be perfect in their roles. They haven't even been that lately. But you're not going to get, if they're not perfect in their roles, and you're not getting offense from them to begin with, really, supplemental but not key factors there, now you're in real trouble because you need them to be good, sound defensively, and what you're trying to do on offense to help facilitate that with screening, and then finishing layups off good passes. You don't have to be a scorer. You just have to be a threat to score off. Put defenses on their heels trying to stop things. I don't have faith anymore in 5-star recruits. Well, I think Anthony Black has been the MVP of this team, and I know so people can just retort, well, what's the value in that? It's a team that's struggling. And he struggled some. He's been, I know has been under the weather a little bit. I'm making an excuse for him. But I think this guy's been outstanding for Arkansas this year for the most part. I think Nick Smith Jr. has been good. At times really good, but it's been limited. And it's been disconnected because of the chunks of time that were missed. And, you're jumping back in with both feet this late in the season. It's just not easy for that to translate immediately into looking like a polished product. Even though he's helped in a lot of ways, Arkansas's had other things that have been issues. I think those two guys have looked the part. I think Jordan Walsh is a guy who has 5-star attributes. Maybe the skill level isn't quite there. Obviously, it's not quite there. It's not there. But today I thought he put up a 5-star battle. That's may be no consolation to anybody, but he's a guy that's helped Arkansas this year. So, I'm not going to just take shots at these guys. We've seen over and over again, loading up on 5-stars isn't necessarily a formula for winning. The team across from Arkansas today, Kentucky, understands that for sure because there's been a lot of hit and miss with that. But it's not a down on these players. It's just I really think Arkansas had too many guys that are too similar. Maybe their games aren't exactly similar, but their things they can't do are very similar. Shoot from the perimeter, create shots. There's not a lot of shot creation. You see a lot of probing, second guessing, late shot clocks. There's some good passes, but even some of the good passes don't lead to a good shot because guys hesitate, don't take the good shot, kick it out, or wait till the defense closes and then they've got a contested shot. There's just a lot of that. This is the one thing Nick Smith Jr., since he's been back, he creates a ton of looks and good ones. He's still trying to get a rhythm offensively. He'll have little stretches, but he's not the guy that I've seen who's so intense and fiery and confident. The guy I've seen so often, there's some of it's coming to the forefront, but it's not quite all there yet. And here we are running out of time. Sounds like excuse making, but it is what's playing out in front of my eyes. But I don't think the front line that Musselman went out and got, it's very limited outside Trevor and Brazil and what you could expect at both ends. And there were times where they've made it work, and lately it's fallen apart. And this is the thing I'm scratching my head about the most, because you've got veteran guys in that front line that came out of that portal. And I'm not going to go through I could go through it and really pick on some guys. There's other guys that are veterans that I think have got some holes in their game that Arkansas really counts on, to score. And then again, like today at Devo Davis, this might have been a game where Devo was going to have a nice game for Arkansas, especially in the second half. Like I said, he hit that three, got Arkansas within 3. You're only 2 minutes into that second half, and then all that hell broke loose. He ends up getting ejected, and Kentucky basically stretches a one-possession game into a double-digit lead. Within a blink of an eye, not any clock running there. I thought Arkansas benefited today from some bailout calls on some of their drives and got to the free throw line, and then they didn't cash in. So who can you blame for that but yourself as a team, because you don't have an excuse that the calls didn't go your way. Outside of the fact that Sheboy should probably be fouled out by halftime of every game. I do think that. I think the way he plays is sometimes rotten, and he gets away with a lot. And some guys that say, well, that's just how he plays. Yeah. Usually, we've seen Arkansas players foul out, and Mikal Mitchell, he played 12 minutes the other night and fouled out. Sometimes it's okay to send a message to a guy. But Arkansas didn't lose because of that. Arkansas got a benefit of a lot of calls too, I thought. The Devo thing, I don't know that I agree with that. I'm not sure. We're far away up here in press row, so we don't hear anything, and we're anything. We don't. So we don't have TV and replay and all that. So we're trying to figure it out. But that looked a little bit odd. I know he reacted, but the Seaway thing, that was an effect there for him for sure. Either they are overrated or Muss is failing to coach them up. Not necessarily. And the reason is because, again, the skill sets are not crazy diverse with some of these guys. You don't have shot creators in here. You don't have guys that want to take perimeter shots or are effective or efficient at it. And so things start to bog down when you have too many guys that don't have some versatility in the skill set. You look at Antonio Reeves today. That guy's not a great defender. He's not a stat sheet stuffer, but he went out and got buckets today. And that was a great complimentary piece on offense to other things that Kentucky was doing well at both ends of the floor. Arkansas they just don't have a guy like that. They don't. Nick Smith Jr. probably is the closest thing to it. But he hasn't. That's a veteran guy too. This is a guy that's been around. He was a transfer, and Arkansas still got guys figuring things out because they had so many guys out at different times. It's an excuse, but it's a valid one because it's not that they're overrated, and maybe everybody's welcome to an opinion and can go down that road. And I'm not going to debate that other than to say I don't think that anybody that is in this class is vastly overrated as what they were viewed as an individual player. I just think the combination of some stuff. Musselman did not recruit shooters. The two guys that he did, Nick Smith Jr. missed most of the season. Joseph Pinion is not factored into the rotation because for defensive purposes, that's where Musselman's gone with that. And then Trevor Brazil was the one guy on your front line that could shoot a little bit and stretch the floor, and he's been out. Arkansas looked like a whole different team when he was on the court, and when then Nick came back the first time. That looked like a team that was ready to take off and do some damage. And I believe, again, I think that's a team with a handful or less losses at this juncture by the end of the season. We're probably talking about 26-5 at worst case right now. But it didn't happen. It didn't play out that way. I talked a little bit about recruiting today. Trenton Flowers, a 5-star at a Combine Academy in North Carolina, he had originally planned and scheduled an official visit. He's a guy that I've talked about, that he was looking at even reclassifying to 2023. I think that's why Arkansas initially maybe allowed that visit to be set up. That was rescheduled, quote unquote, I was told earlier in the week. I did drop that on the message board at Hogville. I didn't write about it or tweet about it, but I did put it on the message board days ago, but he was not here today. So, that was something, if you didn't already know, and people wondered about Trenton Flowers, he wasn't here. I've talked to some folks in his camp, and they're, we'll see if it gets rescheduled. But the idea is that, initially that he would reschedule it. We'll see if that happens. Really the only other thing, we've hit on the NCAA tournament a little bit. I haven't seen Lenardi. He might have updated projections on TV today as results come in, sort of like election night. I'll be surprised if Arkansas's not on the bubble right now. I think they're a loss away from it. They may still be okay because the bubble includes teams that are going to make it. Because once you get into the 10 seeds, I said it, the top 2 10 seeds, they get buys, but they're not technically on the bubble. The final 2 10-seed teams are on the bubble, and then you've got the top 2 11 seeds that get a bye, and then you've got 4 more 11 seeds that'll play each other. You'll have, basically the first 4. So you've got 4 11 seeds playing each other, 2 games. So one set of 11s matching up, another set of 11s matching up, and the winners of those games round out the 4 11 seeds in the 64-team bracket that starts, Thursday and Friday play first-round games in the traditional tournament format. So the first 4 teams count, their seeds count, and they count as NCAA tournament qualifiers, but they're not in the full bracket yet. So those are your bubble teams, and then you've got the teams that don't get in, the last 4 out or the first 4 out. I don't think Arkansas's gonna. Anything can happen in terms of everything surrounding the Hogs, as far as what other bubble teams are doing. But Arkansas's net is so strong, and some of the other analytics and metrics, I just think they're in. If Arkansas had to play a quad 4 or 3 opponent in the SEC tournament and lost that game, that would hurt a lot more. That would really hurt the resume a lot more, and there might be some jitters. But that won't be the case. And I don't think anybody that Arkansas will play as an 8 seed or a 7 seed, Arkansas as a 9 or a 10, depending upon what happens with Florida. But I don't think there's enough damage that can be done in net, because none of those teams are so bad in net that it qualifies as a quad 3 or worse loss. And so that's a lot of talking to get to that. But the point is, okay, so it's Hogvillenet YouTube live. I'm supposed to say that more than I do. I get into these, kind of go on these little escapades, breaking stuff down, and forget to tell you who we are. And you know who we are at this point. But we've enjoyed this regular season, man. A lot of ups and downs. A lot of these are tough to do because I know, it's a lot easier to talk about a win than it is about a loss and then go through all the stuff that looks so horrible. And I thought again, it's hard to pull positives out of three-game losing streak going into postseason. And when you talk about these teams being really better opponents and some of the top opponents in the league, which they are, that's no consolation. I mean, you got to win some of these. If you're a good team going into the postseason and you've got an earmark for the NCAA tournament, you're expected to do better than Arkansas has done of late. Again, 5 losses in their last 7 games. There's not a lot to hang your hat on there. The 2 games that they won, they look good, but those are your teams, in the middle to bottom of the league. So and there are people that will look at what Arkansas's body of work is and say, yeah, their net is strong, and they scheduled smart in non-conference because some of their basically wins were not quad 4s. They weren't so low that it just beat up your net. And so all that stuff factors in, and so you don't take that away from Arkansas. It's a full body of work. there are some quality wins in there, just not nearly enough, in my opinion, to feel good about what's real. Net is it's a concept, and it's going to help Arkansas. But what's real is a team that hasn't been good in tight games, a team that's hasn't been good away from home since non-conference play a billion years ago. Thinking Section 130 is going to be really, really clean. Yeah, they've I guess you guys can probably hear the leaf blowers. They're proud of those leaf blowers, man. They work them. So that's probably been annoying the whole time. This one freaking curl that's coming down is annoying me. It's when I put product in. There we go. It's out of there. Kind of late in the game, but laugh out loud for Playmore. We're going long today, man. I'm trying to get to an hour. I usually don't make it an hour. I'm trying to do that because this will be the last regular season. So last time we were at Bud Walton, it was great to see Kamani Johnson recognized right before the game. I tweeted that moment out. I got to see Kamani near the elevator before I came here, back out of the media room, coming from there to back up here to the media section in Bud Walton, and got to talk to him a little bit. He's always a smiling, classy guy, always positive, and I thought he was really good for Arkansas. And the season's not over, but this is his last game at Bud Walton Arena, and he's been a guy, when you look at this era of transfers and guys shuttling in and out, he's a guy that's been around for a minute, he and Devo, and he's had a lot of success with this program and had a hand in it. One of Arkansas's quad one wins this year against San Diego State, who's a good mid-major team, a really good one, a good program. That doesn't happen without Kamani Johnson and his heroics in that game. This guy is his stamp on this season in a positive way, in my opinion. Arkansas has lost without him. It tells you it takes a lot of folks, even when they're out of the rotation for a while. He's been big for the Hogs, and I thought he was one of the first names I mentioned today. I thought he gave Arkansas some good energy and minutes. There's limitations what he's going to do in a game, but you can't sometimes quantify how he can change the energy and the flow and the physicality and some of the things he brings. Musman talked in the post-game press conference about Arkansas just being out physicaled lately, but you have to challenge, you have to compete to know if that's truly what's happening. I feel like Arkansas's bigs have been flat-footed, save for Kamani, and just getting bullied, and that wasn't the case. They were the bullies before. This same matchup with Sheboy, the Mitchell twins, took a bite out of him. Today was, what's happening to me is a puzzle, and this is another thing that makes me even more concerned. I've said by the way, I said going to these last three games that I thought Arkansas was going to go 2-1. Shows you what I know. They didn't go 2-1. The Razorbacks went 0-3. So I was way off. I'm usually I feel like I have a pulse and a good read on things. I'm not always exactly right, but usually I'm not that far off, and I was that far off. It was bad. And so, this team, I really thought coming off those 2 wins at home, even though those teams weren't as good, I thought there was some mojo working there for the Hogs, and I've gone over some of the stuff that's really failed this team. At the end of the day, this is not a good basketball team right now going into postseason. It's got the components to be a good basketball team. It has had moments in games this year where it looked like a good basketball team, but 31 games in, and you've basically got 3 quality wins. You really, the quad 2, those are considered respectable, but you're 3-9 in Q1. You got to do better than that, and Arkansas hasn't. Injuries played a big part in that, but also Arkansas snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory at times by not closing games right, and then just having self-inflicted stuff. Again, it's been problematic all year when we look at that. All right, we're over 59 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up when it gets to an hour. I want to trust this clock here, and I appreciate those that did tune in. It's hard to do. And a lot of people won't do it after a loss like this, and then it took me a while after post-game presser. Love your content, Kevin. Thank you. That was from Alex, I think Alex T, 2963. I'm a little long-winded. I know that. And I try to get to stuff in my way, roundabout way. And I might leave something on the, I've debated doing these the day after. That way I can really soak everything in. Go back and watch interviews, go back and watch the game, which I do, but I come in after the game, so I want to jump in Well, it's fresh too, but maybe next year we'll change it up a little bit. You deserve more views. Oh, but that's I don't know if that's good or bad. Thank you for saying that. That's just how it goes, man. I'm not good on the eyes. Maybe if I cover up not easy on the eyes. But look, this is always fun for me because I love basketball and I get off on the little minutia of things. When I get to Bud Walton Arena, I'm videoing everything that's going on outside the arena when I get in here because I'm a junkie. I know what it's like to wait for the game to come on TV, and then sometimes it's even late because the game before that's running over and I miss a ton of stuff, and I'm wondering, what was it like? What was pregame shoot-around like? What did they do for Kamani Johnson before the game? What all's going on? What are the recruits? I try to capture all that, so I'm not saying all this to pat myself on the back. It's because that's the kind of stuff I want to see. That's what I want handed to me from coverage, and so that's part of it. But that's why I like doing this stuff. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to go to a high school game tonight after this. It's a state tournament. The semifinals round today, which is a big deal. Next week, it's the championships down in Hot Springs. So there's a lot of really good basketball in this state, and I love it. Like I said, I'm a junkie. I enjoy doing this. Leaf blowers, be darned. There's more than one, by the way. They've got different sounds, too. There's been no let up with it. All right, I just pushed over an hour. Oh, it says an hour and 1 minute. Okay, I'm blind. Thanks, everyone who tuned in today. Hopefully the next one at the SEC tournament will be after a win. If it's not, we're going to show up regardless. Again, Arkansas will play on Thursday. I haven't looked at any more results today. I think there's a couple of night games maybe. The last I looked at it, I don't remember the specific times, but that'll help determine, because at Florida, Mississippi State, and some things are going on there with teams that came in tied today with Arkansas. So we'll see how those play out to see where the pecking order is. But again, Arkansas will be a 9 or a 10. That much I know. And I do still think this is a team that is probably not quite on the bubble yet. It's going to depend on what's happening with other teams that are in the same seed range as Arkansas right now, or just below it, or what kind of success are those having. It could be enough to put Arkansas just on the bubble now. But if Arkansas loses that first SEC tournament game, I do think it's a bubble team at that point. Now you're kind of holding your breath on Selection Sunday, but I do think Arkansas may just have a strong enough net and some other things where that might not even matter. But again, crazy things can happen sometimes. I just think this team's going to dance. But man, you want to build something in that SEC tournament to put this taste out of your mouth and feel like you've got something going your way. And I do have confidence in Muss. If he can get the ship right a little bit, I still think this team is what it is at this point, and probably not going to be making a run. But you just never know. If you can get on a little run in the SEC tournament and build on that, maybe you get a great matchup in your first round game in the NCAA tournament, or you take care of business and figure out a way to do it again. But those two teams prior years were really, really good in February and March, and this team is not. It's back. It's actually kind of gone in the other direction, especially on defense. That's a problem. All right, signing off. I know I repeated that for like the fourth time, but I want to drive that point home. Thank you for joining me on Hogvillenet YouTube Live. We'll see you next time.